If you don't plan, you're stupid.
Welcome to If You Don't Plan, You're Stupid with estate planning attorney Andrew Rosenberg. Andy helps Florida families create real plans that protect their homes, their loved ones, and their legacy. I'm John Clements. Today we're talking about how to plan for your homestead property in your estate. So, hey, Andy, first of all, welcome back to the show. Good to see you.
Hey, it's always good to see you, John. Thanks for having me again, as always.
Yeah, I love talking with you. Love digging into this stuff. Love helping people out. So let's just get into it. The first question. What is homestead property in Florida, and why is it treated differently under the law?
Okay, yeah, this is such a confusing area of the law in Florida. For whatever reason, people don't understand it, and I get it. It's very convoluted, but very, very important. So let's talk about homestead today. So, homestead is dealing with real estate. That's number one. Okay. We're dealing with homestead is only real estate property, and you have to be a resident of the state of Florida to be able to claim homestead on your property. That's number one. Okay. And the purpose of homestead, there's two main purposes of homestead. Number one, homestead, the advantage of homestead is that it's creditor protected. And we can go into detail about that as well. And the second issue, and it gets kind of complex, but we'll go through it today, John, has to do with the real estate taxes and how that changes and how it is affected because it's homestead property. So there's two areas of homestead when we're dealing with Florida. It's the creditor protection, and it's also the real estate tax side of the equation for homestead. But in a nutshell, that's what homestead is. But I have a lot more to talk about. You let me know when you want me to continue or not.
Yeah, so just like in a nutshell, is help me understand that term just a little bit more. Homestead, is it like
Yeah.
is this a house you already own? Are you squatting somewhere? Like what physically, like what even is it?
So homestead is your legal, what you consider your legal residence for Florida. Okay. So
Okay.
you have to declare it with the state and the county where you live in that, hey, this is my homestead property, and file for it. And once you file for it, you get the advantages of homestead, which is that creditor protection and the real estate advantage, the tax. So what it is though is basically it's where you live. So,
Okay.
but here's what you need to understand: you can only have one homestead in each household. Okay, so if I have this happen all the time, John, and it's crazy. So husband and wife comes in, right? And I sit down with them to do estate planning, and they have two houses. Okay, they have two different houses in Florida, and they have a house in North Carolina, and they have investments, stocks, bonds, you name it. They have all this stuff, and they tell me that they're claiming homestead on both properties. The husband's claiming homestead on one, and the wife is claiming homestead on the other. You cannot do that. Okay, you're gonna get caught. And when you get caught, you're going to have penalties and interest and all sorts of problems. They are cracking down with a whip on this stuff. So you can only have one homestead, and you have to say that that's your primary residence. And one of the huge, huge advantages in Florida for homestead is that it is on any value. So you can have a value of a home of $10,000 home apartment that is yours that you own. You can have a $150 million house and it's homesteaded. The state did not put a limit on how much is the limit, the ceiling for how much you can claim as homestead property, which is a big deal, John. It's a huge deal. And I'll tell you why. Here's why. And tell me if I'm going off on tangents or
No, no,
not.
no. Yeah, I want to hear why. I want to hear why this is a big deal.
Okay. So it's creditor protected. And we're going to talk about that
Mhm.
as we go
Yeah.
on. But there's a ton of CEOs, CFOs of major companies, presidents of major institutions, etc., that state Florida as their residence, and they declare homestead on their property. And there's a reason for that. and their homes might be 50, 70, 100, 200 million dollars. And why are they doing that, John? They're doing that because they're creditor protected. So imagine if, more likely than not, these CFOs, CEOs of these major institutions are going to get nailed with lawsuits because of their position, etc. They know that, God forbid, if they take away everything that they have, they can't touch the house. And then when everything's over, they have this house, they could sell it, and it's free and clear. $150 million is free and clear in that situation. So that's why Homestead is such a big deal in Florida. Other states, I believe, have a cap on how much you can claim as homestead. If they have homestead limits, Florida has $0 amount. It is a huge deal down here in Florida.
Yeah, that sounds, next time I'm a CEO of a multi-million-dollar company, I'm going to remember that. But I can see that, just to be able to like protect your house where you live from creditors, I can see the value in that. I think you also mentioned something about maybe some tax benefits. Was that true?
Yeah. So first off, let's go back to the creditor protection. Here's what you need to understand: that homestead, if you get sued, okay, it's creditor protected. Okay, the creditors can't touch it, except there's a couple of exceptions. Okay, exception number one: taxes. If you owe taxes on your property and you don't pay them, they could foreclose and it can come after you. Exception number two would be obviously your mortgage. If you don't pay your mortgage, guess what? They can foreclose on the property. Another issue that can be attached or put a lien on the homestead and cause problems are, believe it or not, homeowners associations. So if you don't pay your homeowners association, they can actually force the sale of your property. So those are the limited exemptions to the homestead that would be considered creditor protected. Other than that, if you got sued in a major lawsuit or whatever, and they got judgments against you, guess what? They can't touch the homestead property. So that's the creditor protection side. Now, I do a lot of workshops, as you know.
Yeah.
And I talk about homestead in the workshop. That's how important it is. And so we talk about that creditor protection. And then I say, okay, now let's switch gears and let's talk about homestead for taxes. And so here's what you need to understand in Florida. When you claim homestead on your property, it locks in your real estate tax every year. So even if I bought my property way back when, I'm old now, but way back when, I bought it 27, 28 years ago for $359,000. Okay. And my wife and I claimed homestead on it. And so we got that creditor protection, but we also get this real estate tax advantage. And what's that? What do I mean? We now locked it in at the $359,000 value. The most the state could ever increase my real estate tax from one year to the next is 3%. Even if the property went up 10, 12, 15%, the most that they could increase my homestead property from one year to the next is 3%. So let me give you an example of how important that is. My house I've had it for 27 plus years. We paid $359,000. It's now worth, believe it or not, $1.8 million. I would never pay that, John, but that's a whole other story. But we had the exact same house on my street sell for $1.8 million this past year. That person that bought that real estate can now claim homestead when they buy it, and it's going to lock it in. But guess what? It's going to lock it in at the $1.8 million tax. So they're paying taxes on $1.8 million, and I'm paying my taxes for 27 years at $359 plus a 3% increase every year. And so my real estate taxes currently, we're now towards the middle to end of 2025. I'm paying, I want to say, $7,000 a year in real estate taxes. That same person that bought the same house that I own this year for 1.8, probably paying 30 plus thousand in tax.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. And then I'm going to get it even more complicated with this homestead, okay? When it comes to this, because here's what happens. And this is the reality of estate planning, guys. So that's why we're going to talk about it. So let's say I have my house, right, the homestead property, and my wife and I God forbid, get killed in a car accident. And we have it set up so that everything goes to my kids. So now my kids get the property, my homestead property, which is now
Mm.
valued at 1.8 million, right? In today's value, right? We bought it for 359. So what happens is there's something called when we pass away right now with the government. It hasn't changed yet, but it could. Right now we have something called a stepped up tax basis. So
Mm-hmm.
what happens is the 359,000 that we paid, and then all that growth that is now currently 1.8 million. So let's just say that's 1.5 million of growth, right? Approximately 1.4 or 1.5 million of growth. That all gets washed away, and my kids inherit it at 1.8 million dollars, the house, when we died, and they could sell it tomorrow for 1.8 million and not have any of that capital gains tax that got washed away, which is fantastic. But guess what happens with Homestead? So now, let's say my kids want to claim Homestead on the property. So now they can claim Homestead, but the county is going to reassess it at the date of death value, which is the 1.8 million. So now they're going to get hit at that 1.8 million dollar tax rate, and then they can lock it in 3% a year after that. So it's pretty complex. Did that make any sense?
That actually, I think you broke it down really well. Like even I could understand it, Andy. So I think you did a good job.
That's pretty good then.
That is pretty good. I do have to ask you though, because when you said, I've been paying taxes on my house for 27 years at this lower value, that clearly doesn't benefit the state. So I'm curious
Correct.
if you know why Florida put that rule in place to begin with. Do you have any idea about the background or history of that?
I don't, except I will tell you, there's some reasons behind it. Number one is they want people to, if it's someone passes away, okay, say it's a husband-wife situation and one of them passes away, they want to make sure that it doesn't cause a huge tax problem for the surviving spouse. So there's a lot of issues, but the concept of homestead, if you go way back, I can tell you the concept of how it was created and why it was created. It was created to prevent hardships on the family. Okay, so imagine if someone had to file bankruptcy and they had to restructure their whole life, and they're worried about where they're going to get their next paycheck and how to pay for things. And so that's that's a big reason as to why we have a homestead, because obviously if you file bankruptcy, they can't touch the homestead property, and it's meant to, we're trying to make sure that the family doesn't lose the roof over their heads. That's the entire concept of the homestead process when you think about, and that's the same thing with the tax. The reason for the tax is, well, maybe that will help people if they lose a loved one, that their taxes aren't going to jump dramatically one way or the other. So that's why it's a reason for it. But really the concept of homestead itself is to protect the family during hard times. That's what Florida's concept, and that if you look at the history, that's what it says.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I was just searching for that reason, going, well, I know it's not the money; it has to be something else. So
Yep.
glad to know that
Yep.
Florida is looking out for its citizens. I wanted to go back to when you mentioned, for example, let's say, you and your wife pass on, and now the house goes to your kids. Do you have to have this written down in a will, or does there need to be a trust involved in order for this to happen? Like, or is this just an automatic thing? How does that work?
So I just had this happen actually yesterday. So this happens a lot. Um, Homestead, because of all these advantages and what we talked about, right? We just talked
Mm,
about the history of it, where we want to protect the spouse and the family and stuff. So there are very strict rules with regards to homestead and how it can be transferred. So the rule is as follows in Florida: you cannot give your homestead property away to anyone you want to give it to if you have a spouse and minor children. Okay, so if you have spouse and minor children, you literally cannot sign a deed over, and it's just in your name. So let's say the house is just in my name and I'm married, but for whatever reason it's just in my name, but I'm married and I have two young kids. I cannot devise the house and leave my wife and my young kids out of the equation. So the rules as follows: if I die, my spouse, if I'm married, has a right to what's called a life estate, meaning they have the right to live there for the rest of their life. There's nothing I can do about it, period. However, you can, if you have a premarital agreement or a postmarital agreement, you can write that away, get rid of that. But without that, you're in trouble. So let me give you an example of a case I had literally yesterday, John. I had a woman come in here. She said, hey, Andy, I have a house and all these other assets. I want to create a trust and I want the assets to go to my kids, etc. And I said, okay, no problem. And then she said she's married. And I said, okay. And she said, but the house is in my name and it was before marriage, blah, blah, blah. And I said, yeah, no problem. Okay. Is there a pre or post marital agreement? No. I go, well, you have a problem. And she goes, well, what do you mean? I said, that house, even if we said we put it into a trust to avoid probate court and all that stuff. So we do all that and we say it goes to the kids. It will not go to the kids. There will be what we call a cloud on the property because you were survived by a spouse. The spouse has that life estate. They have the right to live there for the rest of their life. And if they didn't waive that right, then it's a problem. She was like, what are you talking about? She had no idea. So most people don't realize that there are limitations to the homestead and you got to be careful about it. Now, there are ways around it, okay? So in this situation with the wife that owned the property before marriage and has and has kids or whatever, what she can do is we can do a deed transferring the property from husband and wife to the wife. And then we put special language in the deed that says that the husband understands he has homestead rights and is willing to give his homestead rights away. And as long as that's in the deed, then we're okay. So the answer to your question is, can you do anything you want with homestead? The answer is no. But there are, a will take care of it? Yes. Should you do a trust? Probably. If you're trying to avoid probate, which we've talked about in prior workshops.
Yeah.
But you got to be really careful with homestead because even if you put it in a trust, if the revocable trust doesn't have proper homestead language in the trust document, we could lose our homestead status. And then the county wants that, John. You talked earlier about how, they don't increase the taxes much and they're looking for revenue.
Yeah.
If you screw something up with homestead, they're very happy about that because now they're going to reassess it and kill you with the tax.
Yeah.
And I
am sure
tell
they will.
you, and I got people coming in all the time, John. They have a homestead property and then they want to add someone to the homestead. And then by doing that or take someone off the homestead, it causes a recalculation of the homestead. And then all of a sudden the next year they get a huge tax increase. And they're like, what the heck happened?
Yeah.
So it's a problem. Oh, another restriction with homestead. I know this is complicated, this stuff, but homestead cannot be owned by like an LLC or an irrevocable trust or a corporation, right? It has to be owned by a natural person or you'll get kicked out. It will not be considered homestead status.
Oh, that's another question I had. So you answered that. Hey, so Andy, we got to start wrapping up. But I do have one more question for you. Last question. I know you mentioned you talk about homesteading and the homestead status in your workshops. Is it also in your new book? Do you have anything in there about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I have a topic just on the homestead issue in the new book. And John, what's the name of the book?
If you don't plan, you're stupid.
You got it, buddy. It's not out yet. We're in final stages. I'm hoping it will be out within the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Awesome. So by the time this airs and by the time our audience is seeing this, go check out his book. If you don't plan, you're stupid.
Go on Amazon. It should be on Amazon by then, hopefully.
Awesome. All right. Well, hey, Andy, thanks. It's been a ton of fun. Super interesting topic. I really appreciate your ability to break things down and make it kind of fun so we can just understand it a little bit better.
You got it, John. I love talking with you.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to If You Don't Plan, You're Stupid. Florida homestead laws are powerful, but if you don't plan properly, they can work against you. So if you own a home, you want to make sure your family is protected, visit rosenberglawfirm.net. Check out the book, If You Don't Plan, You're Stupid, to get started. And don't forget to subscribe, share the show, watch a couple of more episodes. They're great. Leave us a review, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.